Very well, this week, Kenyans have had an opportunity to speak their mind on the country's debt burden. They took matters in their hands literally, with over 200,000 of them signing an online petition against a 255.9 billion shillings loan granted to the Kenyan government by the International Monetary Fund, IMF. But while I understand the frustrations of ordinary citizens, I was surprised by some members of parliament who, like the people they represent in the August House, took to Twitter to lament. That, in my opinion, was not leadership. Ken Kesey, an American novelist, while defining leadership, said, "You don't lead by pointing and telling people some place to go. You lead by going to that place and making a case." Two of the MP's tweets, however, captured my attention. Nominated Senator Isaac Mwaura tweeted, "1 year ago, Treasury can't mismanage our country's finances, and then when COVID-19 hits, it goes begging to IMF and World Bank. Don't tell Kenyans to be disciplined when you are not. Fiscal discipline is the mother of a country's prosperity. You either have it or you get mortgaged." End of that tweet. His colleague in the House, Narok Senator Ledama Olekina, on the same platform said, and I quote, "President Uhuru Kenyatta has succeeded in controlling Parliament. We can no longer check the executive. Leadership of committees must toe the line or you're shown the door. This is why Kenya is on a borrowing spree and not even Parliament can stop it. That's the reality. Naked truth." End of tweet. I reflected on the naked truth. In October 2019, members of Parliament were bullied to submission, if I say, by the executive and approved a debt ceiling of 9 trillion shillings. That day, the lawmakers, some of those lamenting on Twitter included, unanimously voted in favor of an amendment to the law that restricted public debt at 50% of the country's gross domestic product GDP and allowed the government to borrow an extra over 3 trillion shillings from the then debt burden of 5.7 trillion shillings. That time, the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani, while putting a case for more loans, said maintaining the current debt ceiling limits the ability of the government to fully implement the 2019-2020 budget and subsequent years. There is no scope to raise taxes to close the fiscal deficit without negative effects on the economy. End of quote. But why didn't the members of Parliament ranting on Twitter now raise issues they are now plastering on social media? What changed? Why didn't they have the courage to stand up to the executive and first demand a detailed report of all projects financed through debt, their progress, and an analysis of whether there was value for money borrowed internally and externally? Some of the Jubilee MPs lamenting today were fierce defenders of the administration's mega projects, even when questions of cost and priority were raised. That time, they labeled critics of some projects lords of poverty who are opposed to development. But haven't we seen government officers losing their jobs, and some even hauled to court to answer to charges of willful failure to comply with procurement regulations and committing public funds to projects fraudulently? Now, members of the 12th Parliament will soon be faced with another proposal to raise the debt ceiling from the current 9 trillion shillings through an amendment to the Public Finance Management Act. There is talk of that debt ceiling rising to about 12 trillion shillings or even 15 trillion shillings. But whichever figure will be proposed, can we be sure that the lawmakers will finally have the courage to do the right thing, ask the hard questions, and demand all the answers from the National Treasury? I'm not too sure. Get me right. There is nothing wrong with borrowing. But there is something absolutely wrong with procuring loans and failing to account for every dollar borrowed in the name of the people of Kenya. So when the debt ceiling review proposal comes to members of the two houses, let them first demand a detailed report from the Jubilee administration on all loans procured in the last 8 years, where the money has been invested, progress of all the projects and their value, the names of contractors awarded the tenders, and scheduled date of completion. That would be a way better way of doing things than ranting on Twitter. And that is my punchline.